My name's Antonio Carrozza. I'm Chief Engineer for Alliance Racing. I remember 6 years old watching the first F1 race I'd ever watched. Barcelona 1996, Michael Schumacher in the wet. That stuck with me forever. I then religiously watched F1 as a kid, wanted to get into racing, started karting myself. We were financially constrained somewhat, and at 13 we made the decision to stop racing. At that point I then decided that I wanted to be involved. I needed to be involved in motorsport, so I went down the engineering route. So I worked out at 13 years old what A-levels I needed, GCSEs, what university to go to, and how I was going to get to F1. And that was always the goal. As the career evolved, things changed a little bit. Did my university at University of Hertfordshire, motorsport engineering degree, did a placement year with Extract, who's the transmission supplier to this championship. Got on really well there, got offered a job afterwards, and then ended up coming into this paddock as the support engineer for British touring cars. Obviously you get to know everyone in the paddock, got to know Carl Foe, who was at BMR at the time. Just randomly one day said, "Do you want a job?" And I thought he was pulling my leg, but it's all right. Then that worked well. So started 1st of January 2017. 2 days later, some nobody called Ash Sutton signs with the team. And then that's kind of been it ever since. So I started genuinely first year in touring cars. I wasn't a vehicle dynamicist, I was a design engineer. But I was thrown in at the deep end. Cole really pushed me along with everything. I had a brilliant team of other engineers around me, Paul Ridgway, Steve Farrell. It was a phenomenal group of people, and they really kind of gelled and pulled me along. So I was data and performance engineer 2017 for Ash and Jason.
A good start made by Ash Sutton, a good start as well by Jason Plato, his rear-wheel drive Subaru versus BMW.
Same again for 2018, and then 2019, rudely, I was then pushed into the race engineering position, and then kind of the rest is history. We're on the same wavelength, we both have the same goals, and ultimately the goal for both of us is to win. The championship at all costs, we just fighting to win it. Whether that's with 1 win in a season or 12 wins in a season, it doesn't matter. We're just trying to engineer our way to winning championships. And both of us are always singing off the same hymn sheet. You end up with almost an inner dialogue where you can talk to each other. I use my hands a lot when I'm talking, and he's always joked when we're sat in the car, when we're debriefing, he knows what I'm saying by what I'm doing with my hands, and he now mimics me. So we almost don't need to say anything. I can tell what the car's doing by his body language and what his hands are doing, and you get this connection with him, and you can really hone in on what you need. I know when he says that he's got a problem, what the magnitude of that problem is and the direction I need to go to fix it. And that means that when the car's not quite in the window when you get to a circuit, you can really get it back into the window quite quickly, which is, I think that's important. I think that year in 2017, when I came into the team as very green, I didn't know what real role I was going to be doing. I was employed as a data engineer, and I didn't even know what that entailed. I started to grow into it very quickly, and in the first 3 months, Carl was piling work onto me. And he actually took me to one side at one point, 3 months in, and he said, "I haven't managed to break you yet." He said, "I haven't given you something that you haven't delivered on," and I've not had that very often. And at that point, I thought, oh, maybe I am cut out for this, because you always question yourself. You're always second guessing, am I good enough? Am I in the right job? Am I doing the right thing? But then my inner hunger for that, it drives me to do a better and better job every time. And you know, the success, the wins is what drives me. And then that means that you don't mind putting in the hard work. You don't mind the late nights, the extra long days. It rewards you come the end of the season. Yeah, it's mental to hear my name on ITV when you've got David Addison, Tim Harvey, you know, complimenting things that we've done with the car, the design, the relationship that we have. It does feel a bit surreal. Like, I didn't come into this for any of that, but it is really nice to get some appreciation. But I will say it's not just me. There's a big team around us. And yes, as chief engineer, I'm heading up the engineering, but I've got such a support network around me. When we came to the team from BMR, we brought basically the whole team with us. And Pete Osborne was brilliant in the negotiations, because it sort of started off, he wanted Ash in the team, he wanted to know what Ash needed to get into the team, and Ash sort of said, well, I'll come, but they're coming with me. And that was really, really nice. And Pete embraced us. He didn't really have space in the team for us, and he made room for us. We fitted in actually really seamlessly with, you know, the existing engineer, James Mundy. He was brilliant. From day one at Motorbase, which has now grown into Alliance Racing, we had this really good relationship. So that was quite cool. So it's not just me. So the development from going from the Subaru to the Infiniti, that was an evolution. The Infiniti was an evolution to get rid of all the things we didn't like about the Subaru, build them into a car, but we had the data, we had all of the experience of rear-wheel drive going into that. So the Infiniti, I expected to be winning races straight off the bat. I didn't expect to win the championship the first year, but I expected to be there or thereabouts. When I found out that we were going to run the Ford Focus, it was a bit of a kick in the teeth initially, because it was never a terrible car. It'd always won races, it'd always been competitive, but I'd never seen it as a championship challenger. I'd never done front-wheel drive. Again, I've learned the ropes in the rear-wheel drive BTCC equipment. I haven't got years and years of experience of engineering cars, so to jump straight to front-wheel drive was a bit of a shock to the system, because everything I'd learned rear-wheel drive, I could probably take 50% of that knowledge. The rest of it I then had to learn on the job, and integrating with the likes of James, who was at the team, was brilliant, because you're just constantly absorbing that knowledge. But if you look at the first half of 2022, the performances weren't great. We were there or thereabouts in qualifying pace, but come race day, the car was a bit of a dog. For the first time in my career, I'd watched Ash go backwards in races. So to sit there and go through the summer break and go, right, we're going to make some big changes over the summer break. The tyre test that we did the 2 days, we had a program across all 4 cars that was fundamentally like changing the way we were thinking about the front wheel drive. Second half of 22 was much better. If you put 2 of the second half of 22 together, we'd have been closer to Tom come the end. But that then kind of fueled all the knowledge of the things that we needed from a front wheel drive car for 2023. So winter development program, I went and sat down with Pete. He said, what do you need financially? I said, well, I need this list. And I said, this is a wish list in order. And we went from the top all the way to the bottom, and it wasn't costed, it was in performance basis. And I said, I don't know how far down this list we can go. And Pete went, oh, we'll just go to the bottom, it'll be all right. And he'd committed to doing it, and he'd put the faith in me and the team around us to go and deliver, and I think we did. I like to break the whole car development process into different areas. So you've got aerodynamics is a key factor, chassis is another key factor, suspension geometry and setup is then another big chunk of it, and then engines. They're your 4 major hit points. Because we're all running the same subframes, front and rear on all the cars, it's kind of, if you peel the Ford Focus off the outside and you left no skin on it, all the cars look very similar underneath. The cages are very similar, they're all homologated to FIA regulations that mean that they have to be quite similar. So once you pulled the skin off, you've got different engines in different cars, and you've got different wheelbases, weight distributions, centre of mass positions. That's kind of it, and that's what you end up playing with. And I've said it before at some point in an interview, but the geometry on these cars, so we can move wishbone positions by 1 millimetre. There's 1.6 billion combinations of suspension geometry on these cars. So they look pretty simple from the outside, but you can go down a lot of wrong routes before you find where you're going. I find that the engineering challenge is to go, we need to find a direction that we're going in and just keep heading in the direction. You want to creep to it gradually rather than using a bit of a pepper gun approach and going, oh, we're going to try this today and then this tomorrow. It's always a development. It's always a continuous path in a direction that you're going. You'll sometimes reach a point where you go, I can't get any more out of that direction. Then you have to change, but it's important to sort of slowly edge towards what as close to perfection as you can get. It's an added drama because in previous years the format was always 40 minutes FP1, 40 minutes FP2, and you had half an hour to get a lap in. You had half an hour to get it right. That meant that during that qualifying session you can make 2 or 3 changes to the car, you could have new sets of tyres. If the driver locked up, flat spotted, got track limits, as we seem to amass them quite a bit, you had another go. It's put all that pressure on you this year that actually Q1, you've got a 10-minute session. By the time we've crossed the tyres and done everything that we need to do to get the tyres in the working window, we've got 2 or 3 laps at most places. And that's really hard to achieve. You are asking them to deliver on a single lap basically, because by lap 2, the tyres dropped off a bit. And then you've done that, you've done all the hard work, you come into the pits and you've got 3 minutes until the next session starts, and you've got to do it all again. So there's not time to make big changes to the car. Whereas before, we could sit in the pit lane for 10 minutes and have a little tinker. We could have quite a major philosophy change during a session. The one thing we found at Snetterton, for example, was the track changed enormously through the course of qualifying. Same with Thruxton. The class that runs before us had dropped some oil. So every time that driver goes around turn 1, there's a different grip level. So then they go, oh, actually I could have gone a little bit quicker there. And you don't ever know whether you're chasing the track, the car, the driver, and you don't have that time to get into a rhythm. So qualifying is the most stressful part of the weekend now, by a long shot. Yeah, trying to keep up with what's going on the TSL timing screen. So we've got, you can see every car and every driver, you can see all the sector times, and then you've got this little blue flashing light that's telling you when a car's using hybrid. And you need to be able to say, the car behind you or ahead of you, because that's generally all I'm trying to look at, is using or not using this lap, how many laps they've got left. There's a couple of times this year where I've given Ash a pointer where I've said, I think you need to use it this lap, because he can't see as much as we can see. We can see what's coming from 2 or 3 cars behind. So someone might be coming through the pack at some pace. He's got stuck behind a car for 2 laps. If he stays there for another 2 laps, he might then get caught by someone else, and you're trying to watch the race unfold in front of you, but while watching the TV screens, while watching the track map to see where he is, while watching all the timing screens, there's so much information now that you've got to absorb. And again, I've got Tom, who's the performance engineer on Ash's car. He stood next to me, kicking me, shoving me every time he sees a blue light flashing, just so I'm not missing a piece of information, because it's quite easy to miss that 1 second push of hybrid at some point in the lap. It's interesting because at any time that you get beaten and you feel like you're beaten because the car doesn't have the outright pace, but it's a bit of a fire in your belly, you start looking at things. And it's not to say that we're not looking at things when we're winning races, but you're pushed to look that little bit harder. And I think we did that to both West Surrey and Hyundai last year, as we pushed them to start looking in places that they maybe hadn't looked before. They've come up and found that. So over the winter, I'd said to Pete, we can't sit still, we have to do some development work, and we have done a big chunk of development. But the low-hanging fruit we took the year before. What was left with the Ford Focus, we had a real limited sort of push. So where we'd maybe found 60% of the performance the year before, we've maybe pushed another 10, 15% this year, but there's nothing left. I don't see a development future for the Ford, unfortunately, because I don't know what I'd do. If you gave me a clean sheet of paper now and said, you can go with as much money as you want on a limited budget, I don't know what's left to do. So I think we're at that point where we can't get any more out of the car. It's then looking at all the real fine details about how you're running the car, all of the really, really tiny details. And if you can add enough of those tiny details together, you then find something that picks up the overall performance. You might be looking for 0.003 of a second in this performance area, but if I look in 10 of those performance areas, I find 3 tenths. So you've got to be marginal gains everywhere and just constantly looking, but yeah. I don't think we ever stopped. So it was certainly no secret within the paddock that for the 2023 season, we were trying to build a new car. At the time, we were trying to build a rear-wheel drive car. We'd got a long way down the line with a certain manufacturer. We had car in production. Just a lot of the design work was done. Things didn't align. Things got pulled out. We never actually stopped looking. There's always something bigger and better that you could go and do. And I think all of the teams that refresh their cars, they do facelifts. If you sit still and you reintroduce a car from 3 years ago, it won't be anywhere near where it was in the grid that it was 3 years ago, because everything just moves on every year. If you just have to look at the lap times, we're constantly going quicker, and we're not having more turbo boost or more grippier tyres. Lots of things have stayed the same, but the envelope keeps getting pushed and pushed and pushed, which is good. It's really good for the championship. It keeps, it keeps it interesting.